know if my microphone's working. There we go. Okay, Happy New Year. My microphone wasn't working and I was talking, so Happy New Year. I'm going to be bringing in the new year with a game called Suzerain. It's a political simulator with an amazing story, as the title says, and this is actually my third playthrough of it. The first two went quite differently, even though I didn't make radically different choices. My first playthrough was kind of what I would do, and it pegged me as a radical centrist. At the end of the game, it gives you a kind of a title of where you stand on the political spectrum. So, political centrist was my name. You can also be like far right or far left. I don't know, or authoritarian right or left. I don't know. There's some different things that you'll see at the end, but I'm just gonna start a new game. I'm just worried I'm gonna get sick of reading because there's a lot. This game is like all reading, so you're just gonna be listening. This is almost like an audiobook. Yeah, it's gonna be like an audiobook, so I'll try not to break immersion too much and just get in character and read it as well as I can. You are my enslavement and my freedom. You are my flesh burning like a raw summer night. You are my country. Nazim Hikmet Ran. (1908), Kingdom of Swordland. You opened your eyes to this world. You came from a middle-income family in the city of Holsword. Your parents named you Anton. As the only child of a diligent civil servant, you lived quite an ordinary childhood. Life was not bad. You were lucky enough to attend a well-known public school, but frequent fights broke out at the Rain family home. These made you feel uneasy. The years passed. During a history class at school, the bell started to ring unexpectedly. You heard a loud commotion outside. As everyone tried to figure out what was going on, the principal announced the historic revolution. The kingdom was no more. The Republic of Swordland was born. You did not fully understand. After graduating, you passed the university exam with high marks. The year was 1926. You had the opportunity to choose between several studies. You chose law at the Holsword State University. Or did you choose economics at the Lachaven Business School? Or perhaps history at the Dare University of Culture? You studied economics at the Lachaven Business School. During the first year, you attended a lecture with David Whiskey. He was a well-known diplomat from the Foreign Ministry and the son of the President. After observing the hall in silence, he explained why a market economy is the better option for Swordland. He argued for a system where prices for goods and services are determined by the open market. Your only concern was passing the exams. May 22nd, 1927. Soldiers entered the campus in the evening ahead of the first election. Many were in shock as the uniformed men created a security cordon and started arresting the teachers. A group of students started gathering in protest, along with your friend Peter Vectern, your best friend Peter Vectern. You decided to avoid any confrontation. You heard a loud announcement that echoed through the campus. General Lutheran declared martial law in order to restore the administration. Please stand back and disperse to your rooms. You quickly made your way towards the dormitory, avoiding the scene. You did exactly as they said. As you entered the room, you heard screams coming from outside. You tried to go out to see, but the soldiers locked the doors. It was a gloomy year. October 10th, 1927, the majority of the students and teachers displayed their opposition. Thus, Lachavin became a target for the military regime. You didn't want to stay idle, so you decided to join a political debate group. The dozens of debates helped you hone your oratory skills while also helping you grow your network. Even though the debates were pretty heated between different groups, you all grew from sharing ideas. In one of the meetings, Peter introduced you to one of his friends, Monica, who was a volunteer for the Swordish League of Women. You were immediately attracted to her diligence. The politically charged environment led you to join the Young Swords, the Nationalists. On June 22nd, 1928, the radio relayed that the communist general Ricard surrounded Lutheran and his troops, demanding their surrender. They refused and heavy fighting broke out across the country. You just couldn't believe it. The army was fighting amongst themselves. Swordland plunged into chaos. Ricard's sudden attack caused even more bloodshed in the country. He seemed different compared to fascist Lutheran. In your opinion, however, he was more of the same. So you participated in a protest march. You were chanting, "United we stand, divided we fall." You were marching against Ricard. The students and soldiers supporting the coup gathered a few hundred meters away. Many socialists were among them. You knew something was going to happen. You stayed. There was a massive clash between the two sides. Soldiers began to beat the students. Tanks started rolling forward. In the chaotic moment, you saw a young girl about to get run over by a tank. You ran to save her, but you couldn't reach her in time. You never forgot her face. The clashes escalated into a full-blown civil war. The horrors made you isolate yourself for a while. Monica helped you cope, and love grew between the two of you. However, it was a difficult time for love. The chaos must end. 1929, Republic of Swordland. The charismatic Colonel Tarkin Sol orchestrated a sudden coup and brought an end to the chaos. He wrote a new constitution and restored stability. The people saw him as a savior. He formed the United Swordland Party and ran as a presidential candidate. In the first ever elections, you voted for the United Swordland Party. USP won the election by a large majority. After graduation, you kept seeing Monica and noticed her interest to marry. However, a letter arrived from the military calling you to fulfill your compulsory service. The year was now June 1929. It was time to serve your national duty. February 13th, Bergia region. A devastating civil war broke out in the neighboring country, Wayland. The distinguished Major Joseph Lancia ordered you to lead your squad on a border patrol mission. It was a very cold winter night when you began marching out of Gumrin Outpost. You could see your breath. After several hours of marching through the snowy hills, distant noises were heard. Visibility was too low to confirm the source. The squad crawled forward in formation and found a spot to observe. A group of refugees had made it beyond the border fence. You escorted them back. The refugees were in despair when they realized that you were taking them back to the border. Screams and protests ensued as they were restrained. You delivered them to the border guards. After several months of military service, your duties ended and you went back to civilian life. 1931. You and Monica decided to share your lives together. After receiving the blessing of her parents, a ceremony was held in Hallsword. During the same year, you were offered a high-paying job at the governing United Swordland Party. It was important to start your career on a good foot, so you accepted it. Working for the ruling party was the easiest path to power. You became the economics assistant to one of the more experienced members of the assembly. You worked long and hard, staying late at work, investigating hundreds of pages of economic reports. You were climbing the ladder. September 1933. Seoul strengthened the Republic by removing the institutions and symbols of the former kingdom from society. Things were also looking up for the country as the massive economic boom continued, and people were the happiest they had been in a decade. Election time came and it was decided. President Tarkin Seoul was elected once more. April 2nd, 1934. The new 5-year plan and the subsequent work regarding finances put you under a lot of pressure, but your significant contribution to the economic strategy triggered an invitation to meet President Tarkin Seoul himself, who offered you a key position. You were to become the youngest member of the assembly. You accepted right away. June 1938. As the youngest MP, it was difficult to connect with the influential inner circle. You needed allies, so you brought Peter as your right-hand man. The birth of your son Frank provided a brief moment of joy and relief. You sacrificed family to improve your position in the party. October 1941. Along with Peter, you have done great things to cement your position in the party. Meanwhile, at home, Monica and Frank felt your absence. At the time, President Seoul increased his authority over the years. His growing ego started to cause strife within the party. The cracks began to show. October 1945. President Seoul barely secured a majority in the election against the opposition leader. Over the past year, people were growing discontent with corruption and the worsening quality of life. Meanwhile, calls for a United Swordland Party Congress became louder as a leadership struggle started to brew. You watched from the sidelines. July 1946. The contender for party leadership was Ewald Alfonso, a reformist and talented business magnate with a growing popularity within the party. Meanwhile, in a desperate effort to secure votes before the Congress, President Seoul was meeting party members one by one. He approached you too. The President offered you the position of Minister of Economy, Commerce and Energy in the next government if you backed him in the upcoming vote. As minister, you accepted. August 1946. The party congress was nothing short of impressive. The banners of United Swordland were decorating every possible spot. Thousands of influential political figures, lobbyists, and benefactors gathered for this turning point. The voting for party leadership began. You voted for Tarkin Sol. September 1st, 1946. Unfortunately, Sol lost the leadership vote to Ewald Alfonso with a small margin. During the Congress, Sol announced his retirement from politics. The systems he had established were to stay much longer. His achievements wouldn't be forgotten. You were happy, or you were troubled by the departure of Sol. October 15th, 1946. A month later, your daughter was born. Monica named her Diana. She motivated you during a tumultuous period in the party. The general elections were approaching. The United Swordland Party was under the new leadership of Ewald Alfonso. You joined the party effort and campaigned for him. And during the general elections, the main opposition leader was embroiled in a sex scandal with his secretary. He was replaced by the strong opposition figure Franz Richter, but the damage had been done. The extensive privatization program proposed by Ewald Alfonso secured an election victory for the United Swordland Party. Over the next years, you dedicated yourself to the party and its success. 1951. The presidency of Ewald Alfonso saw many bold reforms, but was followed by a serious economic recession. The other parties announced their bids for the 1953 election, but the unfair system hampered all opposition efforts to win. You were worried that your reputation would be tarnished along with Alfonso. Together with Peter, your presence in the USP grew and you became the face of a new wing in the party. You effectively took over the leadership as President Alfonso lost control of the country. The moment to make a move had come. You blamed Alfonso for the crisis on television. January 1953. The media backlash prompted President Alfonso to reshuffle his cabinet, but most of his inner circle abandoned him. The party eventually voted you in because of your charisma as a leader. Following this, you announced that you would be running for president in the general election with Peter as your running mate. It was your turn. October 1953. After visiting every city and town during the campaign, you made a speech on state television. You promised to preserve national values. Great nation of Swordland, due to the incompetent leadership, enemies both internal and external are influencing our glorious nation. Today more than ever, we need to unite under one flag and protect our values. Gretsy Swordland! The broadcast ended. November 5th, 1953. On Election Day, millions went out to cast their votes. It was time to face the truth. Chapter 1. President Reign. President Reign is really a gentleman. With a truly classy mustache, the fourth president of Swordland, Anton Reign, was known for his maroon suit and tie. As well as his particular fondness for lesbian cigars. Election promises. As Anton Reign, you have made many promises to the people of Swordland in order to gain their votes. They must be considered very carefully. Economy. Swordland's economy has been based on a planned doctrine since its formation until the former president, Ewald Alfonso, enacted free market reforms. Now the country finds itself in between two different economic systems. But because of my economic background and studying at the University of Lachevin, the wealthy and largest city of the country, in fact. Oh no, it's not the largest. It's the second largest after the capital of Holsword. I will promote a free market economy. For diplomacy, the intensifying global rivalry between capitalist Arcasia in the west and communist United Cantana in the east is opening new diplomatic possibilities. Swordland could take steps to align itself closer to one, but truly it seems best to not align with either. At this time. In recent years, Bludish, Wazek, and Ignolian immigrants flocked to Swordland due to relaxed immigration laws enacted by Ewald Alfonso. As a result, tensions between swords and immigrants have been increasing, and in these times it is best to tighten the immigration. We have also promised to focus on a certain extensive subject within our first term. The people expect us to solve the negative situations within this topic while providing an overall improvement to the related policies. We may focus on health, where since the 1940s the difference of service quality between urban and rural hospitals has been getting increasingly worse, and average life expectancy has dropped significantly. Or education, where the lack of schools, teachers, and even classroom Equipment in certain areas causes massive gaps in the previously robust education system. Or law and enforcement, where increased crime is pushing law enforcement to their limits, while judges at courts deal with a huge and expanding backlog of legal cases. There's also the military. The military protects the country from hostile threats, and while some see it as a massive financial burden, others argue it is a critical deterrent. During my campaign, I focused greatly upon Indeed, what is it that Swordland needs in these times? All of it, of course, is important, but as president, my number one concern my number one concern will be the health of our people, because without health, what do you have? You have nothing. Two weeks have passed since we won the election, and now I was about to be sworn in as the fourth president of Swordland. Thousands were watching the inauguration ceremony and cheering my name, Anton Rain. The die was cast, and there my story began. In the distance, the Maroon Palace stood on top of the famous Hill of Pride. I had no way of knowing what future awaited me there. What's the Maroon Palace, you say? The Maroon Palace is where the executive branch of the Swordish government is situated. It was constructed to serve as the summer residence of Albrecht Reynen, but quickly became a structure of political importance. The turning point was when the Kingdom of Swordland was announced from the balcony of the palace, reflecting the shift of government power from Ariori to Wholesword during the transition period. The Maroon Palace received its name from the maroon-painted exterior walls. It was 100 rooms and several wings housing different branches of executive government. Underneath the structure is a highly secure situation room where the president is safe from any danger and evaluates any security crisis. And it stands on the Hill of Pride, which was named during the declaration of the Kingdom of Swordland, when thousands of countrymen started proudly singing the new anthem of Swordland. It is located at the center of Wholesword, in between the most important government structures like the Maroon Palace, the Supreme Court, the Grand National Assembly, and the Ministry of Interior. The Hill of Pride is inside a large capital park, which gives the Wholeswordians a chance to relax from the city stress with free time activities in nature. The hill has great symbolic importance because of the declaration of the kingdom and the republic which took place on top of it during the last century. I looked at my family. My son and daughter, Frank and Deanna, were next to Monica, my wife. Her eyes were glimmering with pride. Frank is currently studying at the Wholesword Markian High School. Deanna is attending elementary school in Wholesword. In a brief interview, Monica Rain said that she was named after her grandmother, who came in the 1860s to Swordland from Magnolia with hopes to start a new life. And Monica. Monica Rain is the current First Lady of Swordland. She was born in Lachaven to parents with Agno-Swordish background. She has a degree in sociology and has worked as a social worker and, later, as the partnerships manager in Magnus Cartus and campaign assistant of the Swordish League of Women before her marriage to Anton Rain. Her eyes are glimmering with pride. Then I turn towards the key people who made it all possible. Of course, each individual was promised an important position in my cabinet. As my thoughts slowly faded away, the reality of the situation dawned on me. Orso Hawker, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, was waiting for me. And who is Orso Hawker? A Swordish politician, jurist, and the current Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Swordland since 1937. He graduated from Imperial Markian University in 1903 with a degree on legal theory. Later on, he started working as a public prosecutor and then as a judge at the local district court of Erlory during the fall of the Kingdom of Swordland. During the first government of the Republic, he started working at the Ministry of Justice, where he became an assistant and contributed to legislative planning and constitutional law. He joined USP, the United Swordland Party, after the coup in 1929 and was elected as a member of the Assembly. He was known to have close ties with President Tarkin Sol, who appointed him as a judge of the Second Supreme Court in 1933. After the death of the first Chief Justice Gregor Marcia, Orso was elected to his position by the court in 1937. The Hawker Court handed down several landmark rulings that significantly transformed criminal procedure, taxes, and other areas of the law. Many of the court's decisions incorporated highly controversial policies of Tarkin Sol, including the approval of the security package laws and ruling that the Bludish Freedom Party entering the elections was unconstitutional, effectively removing the Bludish identity from politics. As a staunch establishment supporter, he represents the majority of the Supreme Court, and he is regarded by some as the most powerful and divisive figure in Swordish politics. And that is part of just the legacy of Tarkin Sol, who, of course, was elected for a 5th term, served Swordland from 1929 to 1949. As my thoughts slowly faded away, the reality of the situation dawned on me. Orso Hawker, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, was waiting for me. Orso Hawker says, "The time for the oath has come. Let's start. Please repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will respectfully execute the office of the President of Swordland, and to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend, the people and the Constitution of the Republic of Swordland. You may now deliver your inauguration speech, Mr. President." Thank you, Mr. Hawker. Dear citizens of Swordland, no, excuse me, my fellow swords. The crowd looked very eager to listen to me. The idea of unity. For many generations, this country and its long history have kept us tied to an idea, the idea of unity and our people's right for a free and prosperous life. If we stand together, we prevail. In the past, there have been times of survival, times of conflict and economic hardships too. But whenever we stood together, we prevailed. I promise you, we will stop the recession and eliminate poverty. Change now, not in the next decade or years. Today. Hundreds of thousands cheered. They were shouting my name in unison. I felt the responsibility, the power, and the burden all at the same time. I waved at the crowd, which made the crowd cheer louder. I took a long look at the people of Swordland to burn this moment into my memory. One of the presidential guards came to notify me that it was time to leave. I made my way to the leading car in the motorcade. The presidential state car was a jet black Cadilla with flags of Swordland above the front headlights. Or is it Cadilla? Next to it, a man was holding the door. It's Serge Wolkner. Hello, Mr. President. Still under the effect of the speech I made, hearing my new title made me smile. If you allow me to introduce myself, I am Serge, your new driver. Nice to meet you, Serge. It's an honor. He respectfully bowed his head before opening the car door and gesturing inside. I entered the car. We will be heading towards the palace. The motorcade began to move. On the way, Serge proceeded to explain his duties as a driver. As minutes passed by, I found myself lost in thoughts again, barely paying attention to what he was saying. He suddenly made a gesture towards the now closer palace. Isn't it a beauty? The Maroon Palace. He was right. Sunlight glinted off the palace's many maroon-colored domes. It was so bright that I had to look away. Every time I look at it, I'm reminded of my duty to this nation. So do I, Serge. It is the beating heart of the nation after all. Well said, Mr. President. The car drove past the majestic gates, continued uphill to the entrance, and stopped in front of the doors. Serge got out of the car and opened the door for me. Have a great day, Mr. President. A morgnaves kore. He referred to the famous Swordish phrase from the times of revolution, A morgnaves kore, vektern sista, which meant, morning will come, victory is close. Vektern sista! I made my way upstairs through the extravagant corridors of the palace. Marble and engraved wooden finishes decorated the interior. So here we can take a look at the current situation of the country. Active policies. The president may veto bills. President is impeachable by the court, not the Congress. Ministers are chosen from the assembly by the president. So the president appoints ministers from elected members of the Congress, basically the assembly. There's an election threshold of 10%, so a political party needs a minimum of 10% of the total national vote to win seats in the Grand National Assembly. The votes of the parties who pass the threshold are redistributed proportionally. Presidential decrees are allowed on political, social, and economic issues that carry the force of law. However, they cannot contradict the Constitution and are subject to judicial review. The Assembly may pass legislation on the same subjects to override presidential decrees. According to the Constitution, the President can be elected to serve an unlimited number of terms. The justices of the Supreme Court are not responsible for the actions performed in the exercise of their duties. Honorary membership gives immunity. So that basically is, Tarkansol is the only honorary member, and he has political immunity, so can't be charged for any of his war crimes. Constitution amendments require Assembly and Supreme Court. So current situations, there's a court backlog, limited women's rights, the Bluedish problem. There's millions of Bluedish people living within the borders and don't get the same treatments as swords. There's judicial rivalry, where the Supreme Court and the Ministry of Justice are at odds about who has the higher legal authority. Some human rights are respected. There's some violations. Swordland has a mostly free press. And that's just law. There's all these sort of things. We've got Alfonso Monix, weak transportation links, unemployment crisis, tax evasion, decreased trade volume, this huge Lauren Rust Belt, Aidenland lacks investment. There's just all these sorts of issues. The military, we've got military interference in politics and outdated military equipment. But we do have a larger reservist pool and the right to exercise security. But we do have experienced generals, so there is compulsory. Okay, so men are conscripted into the military. It's compulsory. Education is in a rough state. Welfare is low quality rural health care, inaccessible rural education, inconsistent curriculum, and an overburdened welfare system. We've got corruption, illegal immigration, organized crime. As for diplomacy, the biggest threat is Rumburg expansionism, who are threatening, and a lack of allies to defend against such a thing. So Rumburg is this big country up here that is expanding and will soon have their eye on Swordland. But we do have potential allies in Agnolia, where we've received congratulations from the Prime Minister Van Hoorten, congratulating us on our election, and he praised our party's stance on just and transparent elections. He signaled his wishes to continue the trade partnership between our countries as equal partners, as opposed to earlier trade deals, which he believes gave Swordland unfair advantages. So he's going to want to renegotiate that. Congratulations from Chancellor Hegel. He sends his congratulations on your great victory and wished for close cooperation between our countries in the future. Hegel signaled concessions from Valgsland in case of a promising trade deal. He also congratulated the Swordish democracy for the successful elections and warned us about the threat Arcasia's growing influence poses for Eastern Mercopa. Arcasia is basically like the United Nations or the United States. Read the report from Lesbia. Congratulations from Prime Minister Alvarez, who speaks about his wishes to have a beneficial partnership deal in the future. He sent his best wishes to the Swordish people and warned us about the threats of the encroaching Malenyovists, which is like the Russians, influence of United Kantana from the east, and emphasizing the importance of unity in our continent, Mercopa. So we are a fault line in the communist versus capitalist ideologies. Read the report from Wayland. President Smolik sent his congratulations on the victory and wished for a cooperative future between Wayland and Swordland, signaling a desire to normalize the diplomatic situation between the two countries. Very good. I need some water, because all this talking is exhausting on the voice. mouse fell. Okay, so I'll just have you take a look. So let's take a look at Swordland. Sorry, my mouse is falling all over the place. So we've got a few main regions. We've got Nargis, where Lochevin is. Actually, England is to the north of that, so kind of on the north part of the Markian Sea. This is a poorer area. Lochevin, of course, is the second biggest city. Holsword's the capital and the biggest city, with about 5.5 million, I think it is, which is where we are now. The mayor of Holsword reports that the rising population and fast urban expansion has resulted in high levels of congestion in the city traffic. The logistics report underlines increased traffic and slow transportation routes as the biggest problems of the capital. The mayor also reported that the absence of a well-designed, large land-based logistics center where all the transporters come together is one of the greatest problems for domestic transporters because Holsword is a big metropolis. Transporters are scattered all over Holsword, having established such centers in 10 different districts. The General Staff convened right after the election to congratulate your victory. All branches of the Swordish Armed Forces were represented in the meeting that took place at Camp Strongarm with massive security measures. The Chief of the Armed Forces, Valken Kruger, made a public press statement highlighting the increasing chances of military confrontation in eastern Maricopa and requested support to strengthen the military. Here's Valken Kruger. Well, let's get a briefing on the current economic situation. Simon Hall, Gus Manger, and Lilius Graff were about to arrive at the White Room for a scheduled economy meeting. This was the room in the Maroon Palace where all important meetings were held. The two assistants arrived first, carrying a heavy projector. They stood with it by the door, waiting for the ministers to enter. From the hallway I heard Lilius Graff's voice. She was using the patient, almost motherly tone she often took in heated arguments. Gus, do you really think that such an economically advanced area is more in need of investment than England? Lilius, my interior minister, strode in. She was clad in shades of brown and beige, the only spot of color a bright yellow Nura star on her necklace. Gus followed close behind. Don't be an idiot, Lilius. What about the unemployment crisis the greater Holsword and Gelsland regions are going through? These areas are our economic heartland. Gus curled his hands into fists. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development's temper hadn't changed since his days in the Alfonso administration, but neither had his reputation for getting things done. His far-reaching network of connections was unlike any other. Simon Hall quickly stepped between the two ministers without looking at either of them. He cleared his throat. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. How are you? I'm very well and motivated, Mr. Rain. It seems our ministers are feeling the same. I can clearly see that. What was the discussion about? We were having a discussion about the infrastructure plans. If I may, I would like to talk to you about the... Simon interrupted. We will get there, Gus. No rush. First, I would like to conduct my economy presentation. Let's begin. I'm looking forward to this. Simon pulled a silk handkerchief out of his pocket and briefly wiped his glasses. My staff and I have comprehensively analyzed every aspect of... He was interrupted by a groan from one of the assistants by the door, both of whom were now visibly struggling to hold up the heavy projector. Oh, you can put that there. He pointed below the painting of President Sol. The assistants placed the projector next to the table and installed a white screen on the wall. Leave now. Thank you, and please leave now. The assistants left the cabinet room. I was reminded that Simon had never quite had a way with people, but his facility with numbers had made him the most sought-after economic specialist in Swordland. Simon started looking for his slides. He always carried documentation around with him. Lilius leaned to the table and spoke. Simon, what happened to the new police station construction in Estord? While going through his briefcase, he paused for a moment to answer. It got stalled due to a government property boundary issue. I've been meaning to look at it. I can take a look at that one. Estord needs all the security help it can get. Sure. More time for me to spend on analysis. His eyes glittered when he finally found the slides he was looking for. There have been some developments about the Swordish Wren losing further value today. We've been trying to stabilize it with the central bank. The recession of '51 put enormous pressure on the economy, resulting in the collapse of the value of our currency. The entire situation was a significant cause of concern for our administration. Since economics is your forte, Mr. Rain, it is possible you might already be aware of the data. I can still explain the current economic situation in better detail. What is our GDP and debt situation? Our current GDP is 310 billion Swordish Ren, and the national debt is 427 billion. It's still hard to fathom that we lost nearly 150 billion in wealth. The past 3 years were tough. And our employment and inflation rate? Unemployment has skyrocketed and is now at a staggering 16%, and the inflation is at a relative high of 7%. Unemployment is increasing crime and drug use. We need to get people off the streets. The inflation isn't helping our average citizen either. What's the status of the recession? The economy has been in a recession of about 6% in the past year. The average GDP has dropped from 15,454 per capita to 10,359 from 1951 to now. The administration's success depends on our ability to stop the recession. The sooner we can reach GDP growth, the better. I have all the information needed. Let's move on to the economic strategy. Simon scattered the paper stack in front of him in an orderly manner and took a final look at his notes before clearing his throat. As you can see, the situation is alarming, but not everything is negative. The extensive privatization of program of Alfonso left us a large budget surplus, which we can use to stabilize the crisis. The primary subject we need to settle on is what general path we will take in our term. Solonomics-based nationalism happened in the 30s, and Alfonso's privatization began during the end of the 40s. What will our administration focus on? One of our main promises was to promote a free market economy to stop the recession. To be frank, I believe it is the only way out of the recession. I still do not support it. Why promote the private sector when we have qualified state-owned enterprises? Because the lack of competition has made them inefficient. Simon nodded. What are the consequences of the free market? There are not many, but one could say we are much more likely to be influenced by the world economy. It's important to think about this subject because the upswings of the world economy will reflect good on ours too. Yes, and when the global economy crashes, we go down with it. The structural problems of Solonomics were going to lead to a recession according to the predictions at the time anyway. Either way, even if we pick one of the doctrines, we retain the option to make economic choices on a case-by-case basis. That is, however, not recommended in my point of view. The last thing we need is a chaotic economic plan. Finally, something we can both agree on, Lilius. There's another important point which has direct impact on our economy, superpowers. We have done well not aligning ourselves with any one of them. Economically speaking, an isolationist policy overall could only work if we were to reap benefits of both spheres in their rivalry. This is very dangerous to attempt, but still possible. We must be very cautious. There are schemes being devised about Swordland. We cannot give in to their wants now or in the future, otherwise our country will turn into a pawn. I still haven't decided if they wish to come with a deal. A deal that they would surely come out with more profit while our people suffered. We don't know that. We should wait and see. With deals we could get by aligning ourselves with a strong country like Arcasia, recession would surely end in no time. Simon cleared his throat again. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Minister Whiskey will be in charge of informing you on these types of foreign policy decisions. We must first decide on our internal economic plan. Simon put forward a legal document outlining the possibilities with both economic doctrines listed. The cabinet members looked at me. Would a free market focus bring us stronger allies? It would make Arcasia look at our country in a more positive light. They are proponents of the free market economy. The influence Arcasia has in the world economy is extensive. Our economic strategy should be based on internal reasoning, though. What's on our long-term economic schedule? Picking a construction company, trade relations, tax reform, and privatization initiatives would be some of them. Sticking to a solid planned economy strategy will be the right call. The 5-year plans were fruitful in the past. Let's finish what Alfonso started with the capitalist free market reforms. His path was going to enrich Swordland. The recession was a direct result of his free market reforms. History must note that the reason for the recession was because Ewald Alfonso was betrayed by his party. That is not true. There was plenty of time for him to do it. If you can't make change happen in 2 years, then you are at fault. Let's move on. What are your final thoughts then, Mr. President? We should look at opportunities like privatization to create financial resources. This is exactly my mentality. There are many possibilities that are waiting, like education or health privatization. It would be better to promote a market economy for these to have consistency in our plan. So what will our general economic plan promote? We will promote a free market economy as we promised. I can't say I agree with this. Lilius looks displeased. Now that there's clarity on which direction we're heading, I will work on a good plan accordingly. This concludes our meeting. At our next gathering, we will talk about the upcoming infrastructure investment plan. Now that the economic direction was taken, the ministers dispersed for lunch at the Maroon Palace. I've actually, in none of my playthroughs have I done the planned economy, just because I think and know it's generally a bad idea for a country surrounded by potential trade partners like we are. Read the report from Sarna. Promising agricultural growth. For the first time in 3 years, the agricultural output of Sarna has increased. Many experts link the increased output to both the drop in temperatures and new farming practices that have been adopted in recent years. Additionally, farmers are now accessing more generous credit allowance from the government that were left over from the Alfonso administration. The Ministry of Agriculture reports that the region's agricultural industry has the potential to become a powerhouse in the future if investment persists. So there you go. The The recent collapse of the tourism industry in Langberg has led to reduction in trade traffic and road maintenance. The road network is currently in service but is in need of substantial improvement. Ports, country roads, and bridges similarly suffer from lack of investment. Firms doing business in Langberg report a significant shortage of warehousing facilities, particularly refrigerated facilities, with implications both for the transportation system and the ability to serve the population's basic food and health needs. Road network is in service. Okay. Well, I think before taking greater decisions, I need to do a nice review of the different cities and towns around the country. There's a report from Laren, low production in England. It calls attention to the alarmingly low levels of productivity growth in the region of England, where there are also high rates of food insecurity, malnutrition, and rural poverty in inner parts of the region. There's a lack of investment, says the mayor of Arvery, Eric Neal, saying a lack of adequate infrastructure around Arvery, which seriously undermines the attractiveness of Arvery's investment climate. Foreign investors, particularly from Magnolia, are becoming hesitant to invest in the city. Meanwhile, according to data published by the National Business Council, around 19% of a company's total expenditures in England is absorbed by logistics cost, while in peer regions this figure is below 10%. Wow, 19% logistics costs. Yeah, that's an issue. The recession led to a reduction in rail assets, with more than a fifth of the railway network itself antiquated, being mothballed in the recent years. While the main lines of the railway network are currently in service, increasing demand in goods from Gelsord to the capital is pushing the network to its limits. The rail signaling system in the region dates from the middle of the last century and is also in need of improvement. That is definitely an important channel. And in Morna, we have increasing unemployment. The number of people filing for unemployment in Morna continues to rise as the recession continues. The change in economic conditions is historic and stunning in its speed, says the mayor of Morna. In the aftermath of the crisis of 1951, the unemployment rate in Morna rose to 9% in the following year. The last 6 months have almost erased all gains in employment over the last 2 decades. Yeah, so we ought to do a sort of overview of the country, just to understand and have it on record. So here we've got Arvery. We'll just kind of go from north to south. Starting with England itself, which is the 5th largest region of Swordland. It borders the region of Nargis as well as the countries of Agnolia and Rumburg. Its capital is Arvery. England is the 5th most populous of Swordland's 7 region, with just below 4 million residents. The region is sometimes considered to be part of the geographical region of Greater Agnolia, due to it being part of Agnolia decades ago. It is home to the largest number of Agno-Swordish people in Swordland, which is also the 2nd biggest minority in the country. England is the poorest region of Swordland, and it has a stagnant economy. It remains among the regions with the highest unemployment rate. It contains a vast amount of hills and small coastal towns. Its economy relies heavily on trade with Agnolia and fishing. A large number of Agnolian companies used to operate in the region, but most of them left the country in the last decades. A hotspot for tourism, Douro Island is also considered to be a part of England and connected to the administrative capital of Arbory. England borders Rumburg along the eastern Soren Mountains to the north, Agnolia to the southeast, and Marchian Sea to the north. The northern parts of the region are filled with hills and mountains with very little infrastructure, making it difficult to traverse. The coast is marked by bays, fjords, and deep cliff lines. And to the south of that, where we have Lochavan, we have the Nargis region, which is the largest region of Swordland geographically, bordering England, Gelsland, Bergia, and Greater Holsord, as well as the country of Rumburg. Its capital is Lochavan, which is regarded as the economic center of Swordland. Nargis is the third most populous of Swordland's 7 regions, with more than 5 million inhabitants. Nargis has the most vibrant economy of the region of Swordland, particularly due to Lochavan being a trade center. However, it contains the largest area of underdeveloped and empty land in Swordland. It also contains large amounts of oil and other untapped natural resources. The region relies heavily on oil, natural gas, agriculture, and tourism. Gasum Corporation largely operates in this region. Nargis borders Rumburg along the Soren Mountains to the north and the Cavender Mountains to the west. The western parts of the region are filled with hills and mountains, very little infrastructure, making it difficult to traverse. It borders the Marchian Sea to the east through the Gulf of Nargis. The coast is marked by bays and cliff lines. Then we have Bergia, which has this great city of Dare, which is actually slightly larger than Lochavan. Bergia is the only landlocked region of Swordland, bordering the regions of Nargis, Gelsland, and Greater Holsord, as well as the countries of Wayland, Lesbia, and Rumburg. Its capital is Dare. Bergia is the third largest region of Swordland's 7 regions and the second most populous, with more than 6 million inhabitants. The region is also sometimes called by its old name in Bludish, Bludia. Bergia encompasses most of the geographical region of Greater Bludia, but excludes Bludish areas which today lie in the northern parts of Wayland and Lesbia. It's home to the largest number of Bludish people in Swordland, which is also the biggest minority in the country. Bergia has a vibrant economy, but remains among the regions with the highest unemployment rate. It contains a vast amount of farm fields, and its economy relies heavily on agriculture, mining, and steel manufacturing. The Bergia Steel Corporation is the biggest business that operates in the region. The Sol Dam, which powers up almost a third of Swordland, is also located here. Bergia is a popular destination due to having the Arch Sanctuary of Dissension in Dare, a sacred spot for the followers of the Dastrunity faith. Bergia is surrounded by mountains from almost all sides, with Bergia Mountains in the north between Nargis, Gumrin, and Taurus Mountains along the western border with Wayland, and the Marudan Mountains along the southern border with Lesbia. Huge river deltas between the mountains are filled with cities and farmlands. A large part of the Maris Forest is also located in the region, starting from the north of Sarna to Gelsord. So that's Bergia. Let's take a look at Gelsland, or Greater Holsord. Oh, that's technically part of Greater Holsword, okay. Gelsland is the smallest region of Swordland, bordering the regions of Nargis, Bergia, and Greater Holsword. Its capital is Gelsword. Gelsland is the sixth most populous of Swordland's 7 regions, with around 3.5 million inhabitants, but it's become one of the most vibrant economies of the regions of Swordland, just behind the Greater Holsword and Gruni. It's home to many factories, research centers, and small businesses, and it's known as the Technology and Science Center of Swordland due to Gelsword's leading role in sciences. During the last decade, producing sectors, particularly in the mechanical engineering and electronics industry, experienced substantial growth. The region relies heavily on manufacturing and tourism. The region is home to the northernmost parts of the Marist Forest that stretches from Gelsword to Sarna. The Markian Sea coast in the east of Gelsland is marked by bays, cliff lines, and tiny islands. The famous Antel Rock and the infamous Antel Rock Prison is located here. Now we can look at Greater Holsword. Greater Holsword is the second largest region of Swordland, bordering the regions of Gruni, Gelsland, Bergia, and Lauren, as well as the country of Lesbia. The region is governed from the capital of Swordland, Holsword, and it's the most populous region of Swordland's 7 regions with more than 10 million inhabitants. Greater Holsword has a vibrant economy, contesting it with it the region of Nargis. It is home to many large-scale businesses from various industries. Where's Nargis again? Oh yeah, it's like Lachevin, yeah. The industries particularly are from construction, logistics, mechanical engineering, as well as banking and tourism. The river Eskel flows through the region, passing Gen, Holsword, and Conriat. The Markian Sea coast in the north of Gelsland is marked by the famous Conriat Bay. The old capital, Erlery, is also located here. So now I'm really seeing the importance of Gelsword as sort of this connection point between the Lachevin and Holsword. This port of Conriat, though, is kind of another port from Lachevin, an alternate route out. I'm not sure why Conriat wouldn't be a better place for trade than Lachevin, but it seems actually much more positioned for that. So Lauren is the second smallest region of Swordland, bordering the regions of Greater Holsword and Gruni. Its capital is Morna. Lauren is the least populous of Swordland's 7 regions with around 3 million inhabitants. Lauren fell to become one of the weakest economies among the regions of Swordland after the recession of 1951. It's home to many coal mines and factories, as well as the largest forestry industry in Swordland. Relies heavily on mining, forestry, and energy industries. The Natum Mining Group, Woodland Forest, and Swordish Grid corporations employ a large portion of the populace of the region, and the region is home to the largest amount of trees in all of Swordland, containing a large number of forests. The famous rock of Maradun is located here, which sets the closest point to the neighboring Valksland. Lauren borders both the Markian Sea to the north and the Antician Sea to the east, acting as the southern border of the Grey Strait. And then finally, we've got Gruni, which is the 4th largest region of Swordland, bordering the regions of Greater Holsword and Lauren. Capital is Valgan. Also borders Lesbia to the south. Gruni is the 4th most populous of Swordland's 7 regions, with around 4 million inhabitants. It has one of the most vibrant economies of the regions of Swordland, just behind Greater Holsword, and it's home to many farmlands, vineyards, and factories. The region is famed for its beaches and wine. It heavily relies on exports of fruit and wine as well as tourism. The region is home to the largest amount of vineyards in all of Swordland, and it's known for its vast and flat grasslands that are fertile
Gruni borders the Antacean Sea to the east and contains one of the most important ports in Benfi for transportation beyond the Antacean Sea. So there you have it. We could look at each of the cities too, but I think maybe I'll do that like next time. We can right away invest in one of two planned mega infrastructure projects. I think I'm going to go ahead and invest in it, though I don't know exactly what it's going to be. We can go to that discussion right away. Port of Lachhaven loses importance. The latest marine traffic reports show the port of Lachhaven is no longer the busiest of the Merkopa continent, falling behind to the 3rd position. While this is a negative indicator for our administration, Lachhaven still has the potential to shine again as a major trading center. The port of Lachhaven is the largest port of Swordland and holds enormous importance for the economy, particularly as the main distribution center linking the capital and inner parts of Swordland to the rest of the world. The major port city will hopefully keep supporting a possible economic upturn in the entire country if investment projects succeed. Let's talk about those projects. The view towards the Markian Sea from Lachhaven was nothing short of exquisite. The seaside state residence, fittingly named the Blue Mansion, was large, fine, and accommodating. But enjoying the luxurious mansion wasn't the main reason of our visit. We gathered the economic team here to discuss the new infrastructure investment project. Half an hour had already passed since the start of the meeting. Unfortunately, I did not even have the chance to have my usual afternoon coffee. Looking at the view from the windows, I let my mind drift for a couple seconds. Simon's voice brought me back to the ongoing discussion. Mr. President, we need to focus on boosting the economy as quickly as possible. One of the fastest ways to achieve this is through infrastructure projects. What can we focus on, Simon? On the one hand, businessmen are complaining about the slow logistic rail network between Holsword and Lachhaven. Lilius started talking as soon as Simon took a breath. On the other hand, citizens are criticizing the lack of a proper highway connection between Lachhaven and Arvery. The narrow roads by the seaside are not only dangerous, but also difficult to traverse. We need to pick the most profitable option for economic growth, which obviously is connecting our two most economically powerful cities. It is not the business people that suffer, but the ordinary folk. What really matters, though, is that we can accomplish something tangible in your first economic act. Indeed, well, this is a dilemma. So, Lachhaven and Arvery, which is the regional capital of England. Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm thinking, It's a very difficult decision. But I also think that there is an alternative to turn Conriat into a major seaport. That is a possibility. We must prove our administrative capabilities. The people must know that this is an administration that can get things done. Therefore, I defined two important projects for your attention, the H3 Highway Project and the L1 High-Speed Railway Project. Mr. Hall repositioned himself on the chair to take a more comfortable posture. The Ministry can only support one project at a time with the current capacity and budget. Let's move on to the details of each. So which one do you want to hear about first? First tell me about the H3 Highway. The H3 project aims to improve the abysmal state of the road network in the Agneland region bordering Agnolia. The area is home to several million Agno, Sordish, and Sordish who feel neglected. There are no proper highway connections to and from Agneland. The mayor of Arvery, Eric Neal, has been asking for a bigger budget to develop the regional infrastructure. He told us that even the trucks are having a hard time traveling through the main roads. The increased traffic is causing trouble for people commuting in and out of the region. I agree, this could also hurt the local business. It is, bless their souls. I'm happy we're thinking alike on the matter. Let us look at the map. I looked at the map. Lilius was pointing at Lachaven. The H3 highway route starts at here and leads to Lenkerg. From there, it goes all the way to Arvery. As a result, the road network towards the Agnolian capital, Stallport, will improve substantially. She paused and leaned forward in her chair. I saw the central government continuously neglect the Agno-Sordish-dominated regions when I was mayor. Is this administration going to continue that kind of negligence? Truthfully, at this time it makes little sense to put investments in such a remote region. However, we should no longer neglect a key region for our trade with Agnolia. Yes, sure, but most goods flow to Lachaven and Holsword, which give importance to logistics there. It has to be pointed out that the highway would be less beneficial in the near term. I have to disagree. We'll increase the speed of transportation throughout the region. Our citizens will be quite pleased if we successfully accomplish this. Besides, if we enter trade talks with Agnolia, they would see the investment as a positive sign. Well, I want to hear about the other project. It's very interesting, but the railway project, Simon? Your predecessor, Alfonso, has failed to deliver on this campaign promise, but now we have the opportunity to start the construction of the groundbreaking railway project. As you know, our current trains cannot meet the standards of today. As many other countries adopt this new electric engine technology to power up their trains, we fall one step behind. Good news about the electric trains in United Cantana has piqued this business interest. They too want to transport resources and material from Holsword to Lachaven with great speed and efficiency. Yes, major cities of Swordland need more infrastructure to support their growing population. This should be our priority, growth and development optimization. Our plan is to upgrade the old L1 line from Holsword to Lachaven. It will transform to a high-speed rail. I looked at the map. Gus was pointing at Holsword while Simon was looking attentively. The planned construction starts right here at the capital. It will go to Anrica first, and then connect to Gelsort, after which it will reach Lachevin, our economic powerhouse. The L1 will significantly boost the economy on the newly linked cities and even the rural areas in between. Lachevin is our primary port, so the goods unloaded there will be transported to Hulsord much faster. Yes, we should link these rural areas in the middle with the major cities of Swordland. We are talking about the wealthiest regions and forgetting about Angland, which needs it more. The mayor of Anrica, Curtin Lest, also requested this project to be prioritized. Businessmen in the region will be very content, which increases investments and employment. Therefore, I will recommend the L1 high-speed rail project. Well, I've settled on a decision. Excellent. What will your final choice be, Mr. President? I have decided on the L1 high-speed rail project to improve the connection between our most productive cities. The right choice, Mr. President. Negotiations will begin in the middle of this year. You will be able to award the contract to a corporation of your choice. The ministry estimates that the entire construction will finish in 2 years if every step going forward is executed successfully. Thank you for all your contributions and thoughts. Have a good day. See you soon, Mr. Rain. Have a nice day, Mr. President. Evening settled on the beautiful coastline of Lachevin. So the L1 high-speed rail will be the first infrastructure project of my term, connecting Hulsord with Lachevin. Well, I suppose we may as well do the briefing on the current political situation. Peter Vectorn arrived a couple of minutes early and sat across from me. He was struggling to hold back a smile. We did it, Anton. We won. Finally, all those games we played with the media paid off. Peter's eyes sparkled. The strain of the past months had put a damper on his usual rakish charm, but today he was looking and acting more like his old self. He loosened his tie and undid the top 2 buttons of his shirt. Enjoying the new secretary I picked out for you? Thought you'd appreciate our gorgeous set of talents. It's a shame the rest of your staff aren't as easy on the eyes. He gestured to the slight paunch that protruded over his waistband. But hey, back in university, did you ever imagine we'd be sitting here in the Maroon Palace? We have to celebrate this great victory. Let's celebrate then. I got my hands on something special for us, an earlier maroon 30-year-old. I opened the expensive bottle of whiskey and poured it into 2 glasses I had prepared. The exquisite smell filled the room immediately. The 1924, that was my freshman year. Also the year after the Revolution. Very difficult times to be honest, but this smells like heaven. Screw 1924. It's tainting this moment. I raised my glass and toasted with Peter before smelling the whiskey and taking a sip. The sweet vanilla tone combined with an oaky taste developed into a lingering smokiness. Peter really seemed to be enjoying himself. What a taste! This is how we should start all meetings, Anton. We could, but maybe we shouldn't. Maybe not. Thanks for the drink. This is really amazing. The door swung open and Lucian Gallade, my chief strategist, walked in. He was a compact man with sharp bird-like features. After briefly surveying the room from wall to wall, he sat down, poured a glass of water, and opened his briefcase in a series of quick, graceful movements. Gentlemen. The tall case clock in the room struck 3 o'clock. Damn, you really are exactly on time. Hello, Peter. Lucian then turned towards me. He very slightly bowed his head. Let's not waste any time. Lucian, proceed with the overview. As you wish, sir. Lucian spoke in soft, clipped tones that immediately drew your attention towards what he had to say. Peter and I waited for him to proceed. Let's start by evaluating our current situation. The majority of the Swordish people demand change. They're more concerned about the economy than the Constitution, but they blame the system for their problems. People are losing their trust in our democracy. What do you think radicals like Bernard Circus are becoming more popular? Everyone's expecting us to bring the change that the last government did not. Franz Richter, leader of the Reformists, believes that the true change can only be accomplished by transferring some of our powers to the Assembly. I'll move into the details of their demands shortly. We need to listen to the people if we want to serve this country. It will not be easy. We will need many allies against the old guard and the government. Mr. Richter managed to persuade many members of the Assembly to give their support for drafting a new constitution. Reformist politicians are quickly increasing in number. While the reformist wing inside our party is still a minority, they could have a tripartisan majority in the Assembly, especially if they unite under Franz Richter. The USP reformists aren't wrong to agree that we need change, but we should be in charge. We can't let the PFGP leadership take the spotlight on this one. The reformist demands are clear. They want to limit the president's veto powers, ensure that the Supreme Court is independent, and take away the court's right to vote on constitutional amendments. I support the reformists. We need a proper balance of power in this country. I agree. We can't ignore the winds of change after all. The old guard will do its best to preserve the Constitution. Chief Justice Hawker and his allied judges have a great influence over the Supreme Court, which will be tough to break. The court also has the final say over constitutional legislation. Without their approval, we cannot even change it. We will need a comprehensive bill to balance the power structure more fairly. I agree. The old guard won't like this, though. A comprehensive reform that will make the reformists happy would mean maintaining a balance between all branches of government, which means removing your absolute veto as well. The reformists demand that all loopholes in the Constitution are closed. It looks like we have many challenges ahead. We can figure it out. Our party still holds 130 of 250 seats in the Assembly. We've got the power. However, to reform the Constitution, we must receive a two-thirds majority in the Grand National Assembly, which is 166 votes, and a simple majority in the Supreme Court that equates to 6 votes. After we have settled on how to proceed, we still need to talk with our party figures. Our first goal must be to get the 150 signatures needed to start the process. Following the green light from the USP, we will reach out to the other party leaders to see if they would back our draft. The last step is to convince the justices of the court. The entire process will take a long time, but we must start working with a reform committee to evaluate all possibilities for a new constitution as soon as possible. We could work with the old guard to protect our existing extensive powers. How? You know the public wants us to enact extensive reforms, and how do we know if the old guard would support you? Lucian raised an eyebrow. If we go against the demands of the people, the reformists will be furious. It could backfire. True. We can't do it. It's too dangerous. It's a risk not worth taking, Mr. President. What do you suggest, Lucian? According to the initial draft we made with the reformists, there are 2 changes to the Constitution that are not open for discussion. First, the Supreme Court will no longer vote on constitutional amendments. Second, the President's absolute veto will be taken away. This can be replaced with a limited veto system by fixing the current loopholes. I have no problems with these clauses. Let's work with the reformists. Yes, sir. We will form a reform committee together with all parties and start reaching out to the stakeholders in Assembly and the Court for a new constitution. By later in the year we should have an idea of the reform contents and what other parties want. Lucian took notes. Another important point, we must be aware of the Lotharberg Group. The oligarchs convene under this organization to influence economic policies. Conrad led it for a long time before falling ill, and the new leader is Mr. Walter Tusk. According to reports, some members of the National Business Council are in their pockets. Tusk and the group will surely try to bribe us in exchange for special economic protections. I will enter a dialogue with them eventually. We need to be diplomatic. Wise approach. It's good to understand and see if we can reach a middle ground. Lucian looked at Peter. As far as I know, Marcel Caranti has some strong ties to this group. His influence could definitely be an asset for us, but I'm sure he'll want something in return. The group's influence is an important force, one that we should use to our administration's advantage. If we can get them to side with us, it all depends on what benefits we can offer and what the leader wants. We need to tread carefully on all sides with all power players to survive our term. I need to underline the seriousness of the situation. The military and the general staff are a powerful element in the state, and as history tells us, a dangerous one too. We do have some room to make structural changes, by reducing their budget for example, but it is quite limited. With the Rumberg threat on the horizon, we can't reduce our defense capability and anger our general staff. I would advise the same. The budget should be maintained, and we should refrain from confronting the military too directly. Defense Minister Josef Lancia is more loyal to us compared to General Kruger, a fact that obviously can change with our actions. Either way, I see a potential rift between the two since they're clearly of different minds. If we act strongly against the military, both of these guys will unite against us. I agree with Lucian. We need to tread carefully here. Well then, gentlemen, precisely 30 minutes. This concludes our political briefing for today. Our next meeting will be about media strategy. Talk to you soon, sir. I will keep in touch. See you both at the next meeting. Lucian and Peter bid their farewells and left. Oh, we've got a lot of news to see too. A committee for reforms. This is the Whole Sword Post. Speaker Gloria Torrey said that a committee which includes all three political parties of the Assembly has been formed for the preparation of potential changes to the Constitution. The committee has been asked to submit a comprehensive report to find a solution for the current problematic state of affairs in the governmental institutions. Torrey said, USP wants to appeal to the people of Sorland to help in maintaining stability and order in the state. The details of the committee regarding its actual topics or its members have not been clarified. Rain spoke of unity. President Anton Rain has been sworn into duty in a great ceremony in Whole Sword. Thousands have attended the ceremony where President Rain has met with his supporters for the first time after his election. In his inauguration, Rain spoke of unity, bringing focus on people's right for a free and prosperous life. For many generations, this country and its long history have kept us tied to an idea, the idea of unity, said the new president before he went on to start his first day in the Maroon Palace. Swordland Today reports on the economy meeting held in Whole Sword. Contacts close to the government report that yesterday Swordland's economic policies have been planned behind closed doors. Shortly after the meeting, that was also attended by President Rain, the Ministry of Economy has released a statement regarding their short-term economic plans, which include the promotion of a free market economy. The new president has been sworn into office by Chief Justice Orso Hawker, another great win for the USP and Anton Rain, who managed to get 37% of the general vote. The first congratulations came from Casaro Kibner of the National Front Party. The runner-up of the general vote, the PFJP, didn't concede until the last minute, but the results were clear since several hours in. Thousands of supporters have gathered in the streets of Holsord, chanting campaign slogans, waving flags, and displaying party banners to display unwavering support to the newly elected president. The public mood is very positive in the capital. From all accounts on the ground, the city is celebrating that a Holsordian has become the president of Swordland. Support in Assembly grows for campaign finance bill. A bill to change the criteria for the allocation of public funds to political parties is proposed by Representative Albin Clavin from the USP. The bill aims to change the criteria from the proportion of votes won in general elections to proportion of seats won by a political party in the Grand National Assembly. This would result in an increase of about 28 million SR to the governing United Swordland Party, which will benefit most from the proposed bill. Sorry. The new bill will give political parties an annual amount of 500,000 SR per member of assembly. Swordish National League starts season. A very exciting day marks the Swordish National League kickoffs with the SK Lacheven vs Benfi FC match. The league consisting of nearly 10 teams, has been gaining more and more popularity in recent decades, with tickets dropping significantly in prices, leading to increased accessibility. Football fans are looking forward to one of the key events of the league, the match of the two most competent teams, FC Anrika and FC Gelsord. They're like the two small cities. Freezing temperatures recorded. The Meteorological Institute has reported the record low temperature of -29 in the city of Suzerain. Ooh. It's over here. A warning for frostbite has been issued in the city south of southern Bergia. People are advised not to go out unless they must due to risk of frostbite. Schools are closed for this period. And the new assembly begins duty. President Anton Rain has been elected 4th president of Swordland in the 7th Swordish elections. The United Swordland Party has won the election on Sunday with just over 37% of the vote, while Franz Richter, the leader of the People's Freedom and Justice Party, could gain just over 20%. Kastaro Kibner, the head of the right-wing National Front Party, is 3rd place with just over 11%, and the Communist Party of Swordland and the Workers' Party of Bludia both won just below 10% of the vote, failing to pass 10% election threshold. The new term begins with the opposition of PFJP and NFP under the USP government. The unrepresented votes below the threshold resulted in the USP taking 52% of the seats in the Grand National Assembly, giving them lawmaking power. The new seat numbers have been finalized as follows: USP 130, PFJP 70, NFP 40, and Independence 10. Nationalist violence. Ooh. So this is the radical paper. Another USP president. How many times will people fall for the same trap? We've seen this before with Colonel Sol, who supposedly saved this country and brought stability in times of chaos. His stability, however, meant a life of oppression. Any opposing voices were silenced, and many were persecuted. Next was Alfonso, who was elected as the liberal reformer to bring change to the USP in Swordland. Seeking his unfortunate inability, his own cabinet resigned. As the 3rd USP candidate becomes the president, it's high time to realize that real change won't come from this party. Nationalist violence. A man in his 20s has been beaten with baseball bats in a paramilitary-style attack in Arvery. The man claims to have been attacked because of his ethnic background as an Agno-Swordish citizen. He was approached during a walk at the park by a group of right-wing extremists who are expected of being regulars at the local National Front Party office. The group inflicted injuries to his legs and arms, police said. The man was brought to the hospital after making his way to nearby property. The police service of Arvery said it was a brutal attack for which there's no justification. There's no place for attacks such as this in our society, said Eric Neal, mayor of Arvery, and called for unity and urged restraint from the populace. The economists call to end Solonomics. A new era begins for Sornland, and it holds many economic questions that will need to be answered by President Rain. Our top economic analysts, with consultation from the National Business Council, have released a comprehensive report on the performance of the past 20 years. A certain section of the report stands out. The last two four-year plans of the plan doctrine created a budget deficit and a clear reduction of the industrial production output. This was specifically due to mismanagement and inefficient bureaucracy. The year-on-year growth, budget balance, and production index values indicated the two most productive consecutive years had been when the privatization program of Alfonso began in 1949. Our editorial team, with the help of experts like Mikel Avon and Edith Agnock, have come to the conclusion that the recession was not actually caused by Ewald Alfonso's bold privatization program, but by the drastic obstructions of state executives hindering the plan. President Rain must take the advice of planned economy proponents around him with a pinch of salt, otherwise he could find himself in the same spot of Tarkin Sol in the mid-40s. Restructure the infrastructure? After the recent successful mega-infrastructure projects from United Cantana and Velgsland, the world is warming up to the idea as a source of growth and employment. But is there any truth to this success? Our investment analysis indicates that the infrastructure investments can be fruitful in the short term, but even more so in the long term, especially if they focus on linking economic nodes that business logistics depend on. This is, however, the first step. The crux of the matter is diversification of investment, where the government supports employment and growth. It is key to help private businesses with government contracts, tax breaks, and political support in order to create a self-sufficient and dynamic economy. The government's role in Sorland should be to integrate to the world economy and reap the benefits of global trade. Economic growth and income inequality in this country won't be fixed otherwise. And finally, Armadine Industries pioneering electronics. A new prototype for the first pocket radio was displayed by the Arcasian electronics company Armadine Industries in Bantry City. After 6 years of research, the engineering behind the pocket transistor radio have revealed that the material science questions regarding the composites have been solved. The company is now filing the patents for the product. The CEO of Armadine, Aaron Bridges, is predicting an IPO at BCSE in the upcoming years. In a bid to raise further investment, Mr. Bridges had called for all venture capitalists who believe in the future of science and technology to the marketplace to invest in the company. The president of Arcasia, Dwight Walker, basically Eisenhower, praised the bright minds of Arcasian engineers following the announcement and called for further technological advancements for the military-industrial complex. Geopolitical. Rumberg coming south? Our foreign policy analysts, who are reviewing the recent aggressive military and diplomatic developments of Rumberg, will come to the conclusion that it is highly likely that Rumberg will keep trying to push further south, threatening the territories of Swordland, Wayland, and possibly Agnolia. The annexation of Dome many decades ago was just the beginning. Rumberg seems to be on a quest to secure all strategic resources in East Maricopa. Dun dun dun, foreshadowing. In Dare, there is increasing homelessness. The region of Bergia is among the worst hit regions in Sorland, where homelessness has skyrocketed since the economic recession. The number of homeless in the city of Dare is more likely to have increased by 25% in the past year. The rise was particularly stark among Bluetish people, where homelessness increased by 72% in just 6 years. It is reported that homelessness among ethnic minorities has reached the highest level in more than a decade. The Bluetish minority of the region now account for up to 47% of all homeless people there. Read the report from Holsort. Public Opinion Report. People's views on the need for democratic reform in the government structure has changed over the last decade. Reformist propaganda from the leader of the People's Freedom and Justice Party, Franz Richter, have resulted in a massive increase in the demands for democratic reforms. It's estimated that currently 55% of the population supports the reformist ideas. Very nice. Meeting on the media strategy. I'm not sure when turn 1 ends. I think this is the last thing in turn 1. Okay, so we promoted market economy and a reform committee. Lucian and Peter arrived at my office to talk about recent developments and the media strategy. They both took their seats across from me. Lucian put on his reading glasses and quickly went over some documents. Peter turned to Lucian and nodded. Let's begin. First of all, Lucian, you mentioned that Marcel Caranti contacted you. The Carantis had always been known as one of the richest and most influential families in Swordland. Marcel Caranti was no exception. He was the oldest son of Conrad Caranti, the industrialist and media mogul who founded HOS, the richest man in the entirety of Swordland. Lucian turned to me. He has offered to meet with you, Mr. President. What does he want? After the passing of his father, may he rest in peace, Marcel aims to become the next CEO of the HOS conglomerate. He mentioned a productive collaboration. They're a powerful and influential media conglomerate. To start with, they own the Swordland Today newspaper, the Swordish Broadcasting Corporation, thus, which means it would be wise to have them by our side. Sorry for interrupting. What does this productive collaboration entail? He did not wish to explain the details over the phone, but rather in person. I believe I will be receiving a call from him sometime soon. However, as Peter said, they have substantial power over the content of the media outlets, headlines, radio shows. This is what he would be offering. What he wants in return is what we need to understand. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, we need to determine our general approach to media. I'm no media expert, but Lucian made some very interesting arguments at the preparation meeting yesterday. There are two ways we can approach the media. One of them is by influencing it, which has clear advantages. The other one is keeping it independent. The media is a tool to be used. I agree. Media plays a huge role in adapting public opinion towards our views and policies, while helping us avoid damage from scandals or mistakes. While I do acknowledge this will sound a bit harsh, I certainly believe that our perspective, knowledge, and experience allows us to have superior judgment compared to the average Swordish citizen. I see what you're getting at. I agree with Lucian, but why the assumption there will be scandals and mistakes? We can always hope for the best, but do we really think that nothing can go wrong? Especially considering the very recent history of Swordland. 2 knocks were heard on the door. Please come in. Livia Suno, my new secretary, entered the office. Her dark curls bounced as she crossed the room to my desk. She spoke with a slight lift in her voice. Excuse me, Mr. President. Mr. Galade's security has been calling me and wanted me to relay a message. Marcel Caranti, the new CEO for HOS Conglomerate, is on the line for Mr. Gallade. Well, the ball is in our court now. Would you like to talk to him, sir, or would you like me to? I'll talk to him. Connect the line to my office. Right away, sir. Connecting the call to line 1. Olivia left the room and the phone started ringing. President speaking. It's an honor, Mr. President. I know your time is valuable, so I will not waste any of it. I was just elected CEO of HOS, the Heart of Swordland Conglomerate. My strategy in the running of this conglomerate will be different than my father's approach. This is why I'm offering a partnership deal regarding our media branch. I would like to formally invite you to my resort near Conriat for a meeting to discuss the details. What does that entail? Our future as partners, Mr. President. Surely we can't talk about the details on the phone. I just wish to have a face-to-face conversation with you. I will send you the details through my secretary if you are interested. Thank you for your offer. I would be interested in a meeting. You will not be disappointed, I promise. Well then, I will let you return to your packed schedule. See you later, Mr. President. Goodbye. I'll set things up right away. Expect a worthwhile meeting next month. It's settled then. Looking forward to next month. I wonder if he has a pool. Lucian looked at his watch. It appears we're done for today. We will continue where we left off later. Thank you for your time. Good work with Marcel. Keep it up. Lucian and Peter nodded before gathering their documents and leaving my office. We were already getting the attention of key figures, and potentially dangerous ones. Conrad Caranti passed away, the first and most important modern entrepreneur Swordland has ever seen, sadly passed away today. People looked up to Conrad Caranti as a figure of success, respect, and wealth. After his immediate passing, his son Marcel Caranti took over his new title as new CEO of the Heart of Swordland Conglomerate. Glamorous inaugural ball. The whole Sword elite gathers for a lavish state ball. Many citizens in the country are uncertain about their own future, but the state has no problem with wasting taxpayers' money right from the start. We demand these traditions of wasteful nature will become a thing of the past once the president settles in. The team here at the Radical will keep fighting for a better, more equal tomorrow for all. I see where this paper stands. It's one of the most critical and anti-establishment newspapers in Swordland. Many of the previous journalists from the newspaper have been arrested in the Seoul period. People who are critical of the government and the recent events tend to flock to this newspaper. Founded after the toppling of the first president of the Republic of Swordland, its motto always has been critical thinking. Their unchecked voice was mostly not welcomed by government officials who often tried to silence the newspaper, but still has not managed to do so. The Radical wants a radical change in Swordland, and they're not afraid to voice their opinions. Who was the first president of Swordland? Arthur S. Whiskey. Introduced reforms in the exile of the royal family. And then you had Seoul, who took over after the coup. Swordland's regional trade. As the Reign administration starts its first term, there's a question in all of our heads. What will be the regional international trade policy? Due to the strategic geopolitical location of Swordland, historically Agnolia and Wayland have been natural trading partners. Depending on the direction of the Reign administration, we think it's likely that a new trade deal will be brokered with at least one of these partners in the near term. All in all, regardless of which trading partners the administration decides to go with, one thing is for sure, regional trade will boost the ailing economy. The real question is, What does Valksland or Lesbia think about Swordland? Alright, very good. So I think that that probably does it for this turn or whatever. Political overview. You can see everybody. Yeah, at the start of the next episode, I think I'd like to look at more of like the characters and their biographies and stuff, to get the whole like audiobook experience. Oh, I still have a couple more things to do. Campaign finance bill. Sign or veto the electoral campaign finance bill that was approved by the Grand National Assembly. Yeah, unfortunately, I do not think I can sign this. The criteria for the allocation of public funds shall no longer be according to the number of votes won in the general election by a political party. The new criteria shall be the proportion of seats won by a political party in the assembly. Political parties shall receive an annual amount of 500,000 Ren per member of assembly. This results in a doubling of the USP, my own party's, election budget, and a slight increase in the other parties in the assembly, while effectively removing all funding from the parties that are below the 10% election threshold, which right now are the communist and minority parties. Now, this would really just come across as favoring my own party immensely, and solidifying the parties that are already in Congress while removing those who are below. I must veto this. Out of my conscience, I must veto this, as it is not moving the country forward. It is simply increasing the corruption, and my own party's hold over the country, which in a way is not. I mean, obviously I want my own party to do well, but I don't want it to be because we're just using bills to finance ourselves. I don't know, it's a very, you know, the self-interest is there, and it's so hard not to sign it, but it's one of those things like, why shouldn't I take it? I'm just sitting with this election campaign finance bill on my desk. And I know how this is going to be perceived badly, at least by other parties. History will certainly not view me favorably if I sign this. Now, does it say how many of Congress passed this? On one hand, it would it would kind of create some established political parties. I don't know. This is actually a really difficult decision. I'm going to veto it. It just seems undemocratic, and I don't like how it looks. History will not view it favorably. And for some reason I care about that. The campaign finance bill has been vetoed by President Rain after its approval from the Grand National Assembly by majority vote on Friday following a 3-hour debate. Franz Richter, who also objected to the funding package, saying it contained too much unfairness in the allocation of the budget, also sought to delay proceedings by demanding a formal recorded vote, but was overruled. The bill passed the Assembly but failed to become law by President Rain's decision. And the radical states unfair campaign finance bill crushed. Rain deserves credit for crushing the undemocratic proposal even though it came from his own party and would have benefited himself. The bill sought to change the rules of eligibility of the public funds that are reserved for every political party in Swordland. It eliminates every party from eligibility to the funds, apart from the 3 that are currently in Assembly. The insane proposal would also have resulted in the governing United Swordland Party's share from funds to double. Luckily, President Rain showed us that he can go against his own party when it needs to be done. Party Community Report. The Reform Committee reports that any potential change of the Constitution in the direction of the reformists will likely result in strong opposition from the National Front Party. The members of Assembly in support of such direction seem to be in great numbers and possibly make up a majority in the Grand National Assembly, while most members of the United Swordland Party seem reluctant about supporting such changes. Invest in Arcasian company oh, I just read about this. A personal investment opportunity has been relayed by Mr. Manger. An experienced stockbroker in Venture City, Arcasia is selling valuable shares of Armadine Industry, an up-and-coming electronics manufacturing company. We can invest or let the opportunity pass. Yeah, I'm investing all in on that. And then there's a reception at the inaugural ball. I just finished buttoning up my suit jacket when the doorbell rang. The Presidential Guard had arrived to pick us up for the inaugural ball. The ball was a 3-decade-old tradition, breathlessly anticipated by politicians, bureaucrats, and the press. All eyes were about to be on me. I called on Monica to get the children ready. Looking in the mirror, I straightened my tie and took a deep breath. After tonight, there'd be no turning back. Suddenly, Deanna hugged me from behind, startling me a little. Monica had fixed her hair into an elaborate braid woven through with ribbons. "Papa, Mama told me it's time to go." "Tell your mother I'll be ready very soon." Okay, Papa, I can't wait to see the palace. It was almost time to leave. The big ball was starting in less than an hour. Monica, Frank, enough fussing around. Let's get a move on. Monica came down the stairs. She was wearing a simple yet elegant beige sheath dress and short heels. Her hair had been neatly pinned into a chignon, showing off the pearl earrings I'd given her for our 15th anniversary. All these years she'd stayed by my side. Now we were about to begin the most challenging chapter in our lives yet. How do you do, Mr. President? I pulled her into a deep embrace. Now where the hell is Frank? Frank! Frank rushed down the stairs. I'm here, I'm here. Frank tugged at the collar of his new tuxedo. He seemed ill at ease. Are you good to go, Frank? Yes, the sooner we go, the sooner it'll be over, right? Papa, are these people going to be around us from now on? She pointed at the presidential guards at the door of the house. Unfortunately, yes. They can't leave our side until my term ends. You'll get used to it. It's alright, baby. They're here to make sure nothing bad happens to your papa or his family. Monica held Deanna's hand. Together, flanked by the guards, we walked out the door. Halfway to the car, Frank stopped abruptly and turned towards me. Dad, do I really have to go? Couldn't I stay home instead? You'll love it, son. I'm sure there'll be plenty of pretty girls to dance with. If there's even time between all the boring speeches, but I guess I have no choice. Got that over with, Frank? Let's go. The car's waiting for us. The presidential guard showed us the way as red and blue lights flashed around us. Serge, my driver, ushered us into the armored limousine. The motorcade started moving towards the palace. I gazed out the window, deep in thought. Anton, what are you thinking about? With all that's been happening, I'm wondering if I made the right choice. I know you have a lot on your mind, but you deserve to relax tonight. Just remember, no matter what happens, the children and I will always be here for you. I'm going to help Papa fix everything. Frank rolled his eyes. I know you will, honey. Stay silent. After what seemed like just a few minutes, the convoy slowed to a halt. You stayed silent and kept looking out the window. After what seemed like just a few minutes, the convoy slowed to a halt. Serge rolled down the limousine's soundproof partition. We're here, sir. Hope you enjoyed the drive. I did, Serge. Thank you. Always a pleasure to hear that. Serge opened the door for me. The normally imposing palace was festooned with garish banners that nearly made it look cheerful. A line of shiny luxury sedans stretched around it. Politicians, bureaucrats, and celebrities, the creme de la creme of Swordland elite, streamed inside the building. Good luck out there, Mr. President. I'll see you on the trip home. I stepped out and immediately found myself surrounded by loud voices and camera flashes. Hordes of eager journalists thrust their portable microphones my way. My guards fended most of them off, but one woman managed to dodge them and corner me. I recognized the Swordfish Broadcasting Company logo on her press lanyard. Mr. President, do you plan on working together with the opposition parties on the expected constitutional reforms? We are going to work with everybody. Mr. Richter clarified that as long as you support their demands of democratization, they will work with you on all issues with a cooperative spirit. What do you think about this statement? I welcome it. This is a challenge for us all. One more question. One of your first acts as president was to veto a campaign finance law that would have deprived small parties of public funds while increasing those channeled to your own. Are we seeing the beginning of a more egalitarian administration? Yes, no political party deserves to be silenced. That's enough, ma'am, said one of my guards while nudging the reporter away from me. A path through the crowd was now open, and we quickly made our way to the entrance of the palace. At the same time, a dozen fireworks went off. The entrance was decorated with beautiful ribbons in Swordland's colors of white, yellow, and maroon. A lush maroon carpet had been rolled down the stairs. We entered the lobby and joined the throngs of people making their way towards the ballroom. Behind me I heard a familiar voice. There they are, the most beautiful family in Swordland. Uncle Peter! Hi, Uncle Peter, it's great to see you. You two are growing faster than I am getting wiser. Mr. Vice President? Mr. President! Happy to see a familiar face, Peter. Evelyn? Peter's wife Evelyn approached us and shook our hands with a firmness that belied her delicate features. Congratulations, Anton. I have to say, the results were clear to me from the beginning. There's a woman behind every successful man. What a gentleman. Monica smiled at me. Monica, how are you? You barely said a word. I'm more than relieved to have this roller coaster ride over with, but of course now the real work begins. Ah, yes, managing the help, planning parties, daily trips to the salon to look your best for foreign dignitaries. Don't be so old-fashioned, Evelyn. I plan to use my power as First Lady to advance the position of women throughout Swordland. Equal rights for our sex are long overdue, wouldn't you say, Anton? That's my wife, never content to be just a pretty face. Monica flashed me a smile. Deanna suddenly jumped in between us and tugged on my sleeve. Papa, can we go? I want to see the ballroom. Of course, darling. Let's not delay any longer. We left the lobby and made our way towards the ballroom. Inside we were again surrounded by a noisy crowd, but this time it was the politicians who sought to appease the new authority in Swordland. I spent the next few hours shaking hands, joining various conversations, some serious, some superficial, making speeches. We finally settled down at our dinner table with the Vectorns as the band started playing some slow jazz tunes. Oof, that was tiring. We have to get used to it. Well, suddenly a loud banging noise echoed from outside the ballroom, then another one, and another. The musicians stopped playing. Everyone in the room was looking around in confusion. Peter and I turned towards each other, realization dawning on both our faces. Fireworks? No, gunshots! As soon as Monica heard that word, she lunged from her seat. Get down! Anton, the kids! Monica, Deanna, and Frank all looked at me beseechingly. I rushed to shield them. Papa, what's happening? I knew it. We never should have gone. Chaos broke out as some guests flung themselves under their tables and others ran towards the doors, screaming. Deanna burst into tears while Frank tried to comfort her, hiding the fear in his own eyes. 3 more gunshots rang out loudly. Mr. President, are you all right? Carl Greaser, head of the Swordish police force, was running towards us with 3 more police officers in decorated uniforms. They all had their guns drawn. As soon as he made it to us and saw that we were unharmed, he let out a big sigh of relief. Thank God. Status report. 1 second, Mr. President. He turned around quickly to his men. Check the perimeter now. Paul, Jensen, follow my lead. We will bring them to the safe room. He now turned to Monica, Evelyn, and the children and spoke in a softer voice. Do not worry. The situation is now under control. Please follow me. We promptly followed Carl through the winding halls and corridors of the palace. His men still had their guns drawn, which did nothing to ease the tension. On the way, Peter made an attempt to break the silence. What a fucking night. It's not over yet. Carl turned to us with a serious face as we were about to round a corner. Quiet, please. Sorry, I talk when I get nervous. Peter, shut up. Carl flipped a switch on the wall and a panel opened, revealing a hidden staircase leading to a large reinforced door. Inside, a set of emergency lights flickered on. The safe room was comfortable and spacious, with expensive-looking leather sofas. Small security monitors on the wall displayed grainy footage of each room in the palace. There was a boardroom and a pantry containing enough provisions to last us months. Monica and Evelyn sat the children down and started wiping their tears. Carl stepped away from us and made a few radio calls. When he was done, he returned to me and Peter. Not the best inauguration ball I've been to? Peter let out a nervous laugh. Certainly not, sir. Carl's radio suddenly cracked to life. Every second felt like an eternity as he pressed his ear to the receiver. When it fell silent, he turned to us. Good news, we're not in any danger at the moment. The situation has been dealt with and the perimeter has been secured by the guards and police. He glanced toward Monica, Evelyn, and the kids. If I may, sir. He gestured towards a more private corner of the room and started speaking more quietly. This is what we know so far. We've confirmed that 2 people were gunned down in front of the palace. The attacker is one of them, and we have reasons to believe that he was working alone. He fired 3 shots at an MP, 1 to the head, 2 to the body, instantly killing him. Presidential guards at the palace immediately shot and killed the attacker. He has not been identified yet and will require an investigation. The MP that was killed was identified as Bernard Circus. This is huge, Anton. This will cause a lot of problems. A lot of problems. Peter pulled out 2 cigarettes and handed me one. He then turned to Evelyn. I could hear him trying to reassure her that everything was going to be all right. Monica was still trying to tend to Deanna and Frank as Frank paced the room, mumbling that he should have stayed home. I lit the cigarette and took a deep drag. As I continued smoking, a peculiar calm washed over me. I was going to see this through, at all costs. I crushed the cigarette on the ashtray. Security measures at the Capitol have been heightened after the murder of Bernard Circus. The mayor of Wholesort reports that everything's under control. Security around the Maroon Palace has been increased with the combined efforts of the Wholesort Police Department and the Presidential Guard. Additionally, the entrance procedures of the palace are being revised with advice from security professionals. The police chief, Carl Grieser, reports that an investigation has been launched on the murder of Bernard Circus. Rain welcomes Richter's words. President Rain gave signals about a cooperation with Franz Richter of the PFJP ahead of the inaugural ball. Regarding the remarks of Richter about a possible cooperation to fix the current problems of Swordish political institutions, I welcome it. This is a challenge for us all, said President Rain. Richter has long been vocal about his democratization plans, but maybe his demands for constitutional change may finally become a reality if President Rain leads a bill together with Richter's PFJP. And there's a story on the MP shot, Nation in shock. Sordlin has been shocked by grave news today as an elected member of the parliament has been shot dead in a suspected political assassination. Police sirens were heard around the clock today as the Wholesort police force increased security measures around the Capitol. The fact that such a violent act happened at the heart of the Capitol during the new president's inauguration celebrations has worried many citizens. The Red Youth was reported to have promised revenge. This seems like it has the potential to be a spark that would swirl Sordlin into the political violence in the 1920s. And there's an emergency meeting. I do not know when this turn 1 ends. The mood in the Situation Room was gloomy. My cabinet members were gathered to discuss the shooting outside the palace. Lilius presented the initial report. Bernard Circus was shot dead at 9:03 p.m. in front of the palace gates. He was an elected independent member of the Assembly and, as you know, a famous communist. She spat the last words out with some distaste. The guards at the scene were 50 meters away and immediately took action by responding and killing the assailant who was identified as the member of the nationalist organization Young Swords. The president and his family were unharmed, praise God. And what were the motivations of such a horrid act? Our investigators are suspecting a political assassination since the Young Swords have been threatening the communists for some time. This sets a dangerous atmosphere where the left versus right political violence of the 1920s might spark once again. A return to those days would be devastating. The coups are the reason why our country stagnated for a decade. Nia Morgana, the Minister of Justice, sighed. The Red Youth has condemned the killing but didn't stop there. They promised revenge. This will in turn spark further aggression from the Young Swords, and the whole cycle started because the Bernard Circus expressed his views. We can't simply look away. Nia had always been one of the only members of the Justice Ministry truly deserving of the name. She had survived countless attacks on her character while fighting corruption within the ministry, and rising to power had only compounded her sense of moral duty. Freedom of expression is part of our Constitution. We can't have anyone, let alone an MP, shot for voicing different opinions. I fully agree. We should protect freedom of speech. Our laws do, and for good reason. Silencing voices only results in fear and stagnation inside society. We had that before and we know very well how it was. I hear your concerns. Our police do their best to uphold the rights of our citizens. We will prevent such an act from happening again by making sure our security measures are re-evaluated. Minister of Defense Josef Lancia grunted in approval. He towered over the rest of us in full military uniform, his many war medals conspicuous on display. Agreed, ma'am. Our gendarmerie will also help boost security in the rural areas where possible. There might be more to come. We should refrain from making the issue a political one from the start. It will only add fuel to the fire. It's early, but will we attend the funeral? In my opinion, we should. The nuance here is to detach the person from the violent act. How can that be achieved when it is Bernard Circus we're talking about? He is the communist of Swordland. It is difficult, but an elected official has been shot. This is unacceptable for our new administration. We need to make sure we show our stance by condemning it at the funeral. Several police cars rushed past the Maroon Palace and everyone went silent. Regardless, a full investigation on all involved parties is underway. We will find the subversives and punish them soon enough, Mr. President. I will do my best to help coordinate the administrative tasks. Justice will be served and the rule of law will return to this country stronger than ever. Only if we stay as vigilant as a country. We must think about the upcoming budget. I agree. Internal stability must be maintained. Our security funding might need to be increased. I'm sure the Minister of Interior has already taken the necessary precautions. You can be assured that our police units and intelligence units are on increased threat condition. Nobody should be able to move a finger against government officials. Lucian took some notes after checking the latest newspapers and reports. It seems that tensions between the communists and nationalists will escalate further. It will be very difficult to pass any meaningful change if there's chaos in the country. We can't fix the recession if there isn't stability. You are right. We need to trust our ministers to stabilize the situation if it comes to it. This will be it for today then. We will convene again soon. Thank you all, and keep us updated. The meeting concluded and the ministers left the room with concerned looks. It was hard to anticipate what would happen next. Breaking news. Bernard Circus, a prominent independent MP known for his communist romanticism, has been murdered leaving the Maroon Palace grounds after the inauguration ball of Anton Rain. Reports indicate a politically motivated assault by the far-right nationalists of the Young Swords. Shocking photographs have been leaked to the press showing blood-drip stairs in the Maroon Palace. We heavily condemn this sort of political violence. This is the very cycle the president must break with reforms. I want to see the codex because some things have changed. Bernard Circus wrote works, communist ideological vision of Malyanev, futurism. He was shot when he was leaving Anton Rain's inauguration by a member of the Young Swords. Business, Conrad Karanti passed away. So, next time, now we're finally at the end of chapter 1. Next time we can do a deep dive into some of the encyclopedia stuff.